Now, something you've seen rise in the media quite a lot recently, probably over the last sort of 5 to 7 years or so, is the term county lines drug gangs. Now, it's not too much of a surprise for you, but most drugs don't come from this country. So, most drugs have had to been supplied from elsewhere. But what is new, in a way, is the methods used by these inner city drug gangs to come and bring their skills and their kind of tactics to a lot of seaside towns around the country. A lot of the times these are down in the southwest, but obviously it's everywhere. Anywhere where there's a party scene around a coastal town can end up being a target for one of these gangs. And the money that they're able to make now from taking drugs from their city, Manchester, Nottingham, Birmingham, all of these kind of places, Liverpool, the money they can make out of town is matching the money they make in town. So it's very, very, very profitable for them. Now, this isn't a completely brand new situation. I mean, the people that we're talking about, these little gangs from Liverpool and Manchester coming down to Cornwall and setting up in Newquay and selling drugs in Newquay isn't a new thing. Like I say, it's something that's how I used to make my living before. We'd rob these anonymous gangs that weren't from our area, and there was never any comeback on us for that. And even people from the local community would kind of pat us on the back, really, because they didn't want these gangs down in town either. I mentioned it before on another podcast that little old ladies would be giving us tips on gangs that were in their town, and someone asked me, did that actually happen? And yeah, it did. I remember being in the kitchen of one of my friend's aunties, and she was there with a couple of other ladies, and an older lady was sat in the kitchen as well. I can't remember how the conversation got round to it, but I remember someone saying that, William can help you out with those scumbags that have moved in on your road. And I kind of said, oh yeah, what's this about? And she let me know that these two guys from Liverpool had set up in a house down the road from her, and they were selling drugs and things, and they were just sort of scallies hanging around all the time, and she didn't like it, and it was a bit of a skid mark on the fucking on the road, really. So me and my pal went round there and we kicked the fuck out of them and took their drugs and money, and kind of sent them packing, really, let them know that they wouldn't be accepted in the area anymore. And this was the kind of role we took. Was kind of the Lone Rangers doing the jobs that the community wanted. So yeah, we were crooks, but we were kind of their crooks. So they didn't mind it. Now, obviously, I found out a lot of information about these kind of dealers through parties and things like this. You'd be at a party sniffing coke, and kind of loosens people up a lot. And they'd eventually tell me, people would tell me, this and that, because they knew what I was up to. They knew I didn't work. I just sold drugs and beat people up for a living. So yeah, people would be quite happy to give me information about gangs and things. Now, obviously, there's a real dark side to it, because these gangs, they then they want to get tougher. They don't just set up on their own. They start bringing weapons down with them. And I'm glad I'm out of it, really, because just having a look through the news and then some of the news stories before I set this podcast up, I'm just going to read out a couple of stories I found in some of the newspapers. So let's have a look. I've got one here from a copper in Newquay, and he was saying about county lines drug gangs. Let's have a look. Within 24 hours, they'll find somewhere to move into. They'll make promises and supply drugs and put them under duress. It's amazing how quickly they can hit a town where they don't know anybody, and they can quickly find somewhere to move into and keep under the radar and start dealing. Drug addicts out there get a text message from people they've never heard of saying that this and that is for sale. They're very good at getting people's telephone numbers because the drugs fraternity, they're all in the drugs fraternity, they're all communicating. Yeah, so what they'll do is a couple of them will move into a bedsit or into an addict's house, something like this, and then they'll already have a list of phone numbers of drug addicts in that town that another dealer would have supplied them, because they're all working for a gang, maybe up in Liverpool, say, and then they get sent down with a mobile phone full of drug addicts' numbers, and they'll send out the messages to these drug addicts, and obviously they'll keep adding numbers to that database as well. And then within hours they could have customers at their door, with obviously money needing to sell fucking drugs. It's terrible. Now, I just having another look at this one. It was a bit of a retaliation, and I think I know who they're talking about. This is an article in Vice News, and it's another one about kind of Cornwall. And it said, in May 2019, 15 drug dealers entered a quaint-looking pub in St Ives, a seaside town on Britain's southwesterly tip. Dressed in all identical black clothing, they walked up to the bar and ordered a round of beers before sitting down on one of the old velvet benches lining the room. They sunk their pints and suddenly began to trash the historic inn, with heavily wooden tables and chairs flying across the low-ceilinged room. Then they took a photo of the smashed-up pub and gleefully posted it on social media. This attack wasn't just mindless thuggery. It was planned and implemented by an organised group, a collective of Cornish drug crews combining forces to protect their turf from a common enemy: big city drugs gangs. The pub landlord's crime: allowing a cocaine dealer from Birmingham to use the venue as a base to sell drugs, taking a valuable custom away from the local drug dealing gangs. Now, I think I know who these guys are, to be honest with you, because it says here that although the organisation was based on Cornwall's far west coast in Penzance, it is unnamed through choice. It holds regular meetings for approved members from all over the region. There they discuss drug business issues and work together to drive away any incoming urban gangs, usually with violent tactics. Some members are rival drug dealers by day, while others prefer to describe themselves as militant Cornish nationalists. Now, I was approached by some of these guys, I think, to join this little fraternity, but it wasn't something that I was into, really. A lot of what I was doing would be just robbing people, not to kind of protect my patch, but just to make an income, really, because you can quite easily. Just again having a look at another story here, you can quite easily get quite a lot of money for very little effort. You go in there with a baseball bat or a hammer. I used to like hammers because they look quite scary. Reading from another story here, we've got 5 men from Nottingham, suspected to be a county lines drugs gang, were busted in a police raid in Newquay yesterday. Class A drugs, believed to be heroin with a value of approximately 2,000, were seized, along with a mobile phone and approximately £1,000 in cash. A vehicle was also seized by police. That's just what they had lying around with them at the time. So all you've got to do is a couple of those every now and then, and you're earning a month's wage, and you've got a fucking pocket full of drugs as well. And it's not just Cornwall. It's like I say, it's any seaside town. I've mentioned in some of my podcasts before about Scouse gangs running other towns. I've got one here from Bournemouth. Police discovered 3 males, weapons, and a large quantity of drugs, and they raided an address on Friday. The haul included more than £5,000 in cash, phones, a hunting knife, and other drugs paraphernalia. The occupier and his carer have since been safeguarded by the police and taken underway. So this is something else they'll do as well. So it's not only drug addicts, but it can be disabled people and just vulnerable people in the area. People who just can't say no, or just get bullied into fucking housing these drugs gangs. They call it cuckooing. So they'll literally come and just come and work their way into your nest and take over. And this one, like I said, they got a disabled person and their carer to fucking help them out with this. Now, another one I remember reading about, I can't find it now, I was going to look for the story, but it was in Newquay again, and these drugs gangs, they got into this guy with learning disabilities house, and they'd taken his dog, and they were threatening him, basically, that they were going to kill his dog if they didn't, allow him to sell drugs from the house and stuff. And the guy obviously didn't have any way of fighting back or pushing back against them. So obviously they allowed it to happen. Not only were they selling drugs from his house, but they were storing drugs there. And one time, the disabled guy was in the house on his own, and someone turned up and said, "Oh, I'm here to pick up pick up that parcel." So they came in and got the drugs and left. And then when the 2 lads came back, who were kind of, minding him, They came looking for the drugs, and he told them that he'd given them away to somebody, and they'd either set him up or he'd been robbed. But they went mad that the disabled guy had given the drugs away, and now he owed money, so he had to pay them for the drugs that had been lost, or they were going to kill this dog, or do something to him. Now that was probably just a big scam, a big con, to kind of get more money out of him and stuff like this. But yeah, they're just parasites, these fucking people. The same as they are. They're just a scourge on any town and area. But the fact that they've moved into kind of bullying and exploiting people as well as areas. Like I say, these used to be my bread and butter, robbing these people back in the day. And like I say, now it's become cool. Now it's become much more known across the country as drugs lines and county lines, drugs gangs. But yeah, like I say, people have always been moving from one county to another to kind of sell drugs. But this is much more organised and much more worrying now. That city violence and city drugs gangs are coming down to Cornwall and seaside towns like this. I remember being surprised when I first started dealing drugs, how easy it was and how prevalent it was, because you only really kind of, when you haven't been exposed to that kind of thing, you expect drug deals to be between criminal looking people, doing criminal looking stuff, but on the whole it's just normal guys. The guy I used to buy drugs off was just he was an ex-hippie, in his 40s or 50s who just had more drugs than he could smoke himself, and because he was a good guy, obviously he had his connections, and he only dealt with sort of decent people. So it was a kind of, not like a brotherhood, but it was a group of like-minded people who sold drugs to each other. Whereas like I say, these kind of violent drugs gangs now, it's just a whole different ball game, or it can be. I suppose it's always been fairly gnarly. When I first went to buy my drugs, I was surprised because, again, I went down to a seaside town to go and do it, and I'd have to stand outside an arcade and get the attention of the runner, who would be sort of walking backwards and forwards out of the arcade. And the guy I would go and get my drugs from would be in the back of the arcade, and he'd just be sort of in there on a gambling machine or something, sat there all day. And you go and get a message to him what you wanted, and then the runner would go and get it and meet you down the road and drop it off to you. But yeah, this was right in the middle of a seaside town that you had to go and go and get your drugs. And I just thought it was amazing that thousands of tourists are walking past every day and don't even realise that this one's here. There's probably another one a bit further down the road. Someone used to say to me, actually, it was obvious who the drug dealers were in Newquay, because they're the only people flying around. They're the only 20-year-olds flying around in Range Rovers in the middle of the afternoon. Everyone else has got a job or they're down there on holiday. But yeah, just look out for the Range Rovers flying around in the middle of the afternoon. They're your drug dealers. So yeah, I just thought it'd be a quick little video today, just about the kind of the dark side of seaside towns, and I was part of it, so I can't say it's it's completely alien to me. But yeah, once the sun goes down and the parties start, it can be quite a dark little place. These beautiful little seaside towns. All right, thank you very much. Cheers.